Hello there. Welcome to the Breaking Barriers interview series. I am your host, Honorable Dr. Saskia Christian, founder of Boost Through. And I am super excited, yes, to have you join our platform today. Our platform, we actually interview incredible women, executive leaders, about their amazing leadership insights, their resilience building, and emotional intelligence application journey. Now, the theme for today's show is leading with purpose, transforming education and building resilience through inclusive leadership. Now, we have to admit, there are leaders who manage systems, and then there are leaders who reimagine them. Today on Breaking Barriers, we are joined by one of the most dynamic voices in higher education, Dr. Angie Paccione, Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Education. Dr. Angie, a Stanford alum, is also a member of the Governor's Cabinet. She's been a professional athlete, exceptional, a high school educator, administrator and coach, a university professor, a state legislator, a global corporate consultant. Yes, she's all of that. An award-winning author. Through all the work she has done, Dr. Angie continues to be committed to activating the potential of others. Now, her journey has been one of purpose, perseverance, and transformation. Now, from her early days as a teacher and coach to her trailblazing work as a legislator and now a statewide education leader, Dr. Angie has continually worked to make education not just a privilege, but a pathway, one that uplifts every barrier, every learner, and empowers every leader. Now, in this conversation, we'll explore how resilience, emotional intelligence, and authentic leadership converge to shape her vision of quality, equity, and excellence. Welcome to Break Years interview series. It's a privilege to have you with us today. Now, your career spans education, policy, executive leadership. How impressive. All to the end service and transformation. Now, to begin, let's just ground our audience a bit in who you are and what drives you. So, if you can just tell us a little bit about just your name, title again, and just a glimpse of your leadership journey, that would be excellent.
Thank
Thank you.
you. So you got it right. It's Angie Paccione. You have to use your hands sometimes to say it. My
Yes.
stepdad is Italian, and I took his name when I was 10 years old. And
Wonderful.
so, but I grew up in the South Bronx in New York City, and grew up with my mom was an unwed teen Black girl in the city, and but she was also one of the first women to work on Wall Street. And she and my grandmother, two very strong Black women, really instilled a passion for education in me, because they knew that even though at that time I was born in 1960, so before the
Mhm.
civil rights movement, before women's rights, of course, before it was legal in all 50 states for my mom and my birth father, who's white, to be married in all 50 states. That didn't happen until 1967. So there were voting rights was 65. So there was a lot of social change that was coming. But at the time I was born, they instilled in me all along this passion for education, that something that no one could take from you, and something that would open doors all the way down your future. And it did, all throughout all of the twists and turns of playing pro sports, and going into education, going into corporate training. So I've done a lot of different things, but always had my eye on the prize of really bringing out the best in people.
Yes, and you do that wonderfully. Thank you so much. Brilliantly said. Now, few leaders across as many sectors as you have, from classrooms to the Colorado State Legislature,
Mm-hmm.
executive leadership. Each role, I'm sure, demanded resilience, empathy, and courage. I'd love for you to take us behind the curtain of that
Mm-hmm.
evolution.
Mm-hmm.
What were the defining moments for you that
Boy,
shaped?
yeah, great question. And you're absolutely right. Each of those career sectors um, required resilience for sure, especially because I chose professions in which sometimes my situation was not under my control. Because when you're a legislator, you have to respond to your constituents, the people that voted for you. You also have to respond to your colleagues on your side of the aisle, so to speak, but also on the other side of the aisle. And sometimes you have to respond to the governor. So you have to be and sometimes at the mercy of other people. When you're a teacher, your students create an environment for you to succeed or not, your administration, the parents. And so there was always an arena, if you will, in which I had to participate. That wasn't always under my control. So
Mhm.
resilience, to me, is really responding to those kinds of pressures or those kinds of changing winds in a way that's healthy, but also in a way that never compromises your values or your convictions. And so you have to keep your eyes on what's important to you rather than just sway in the wind. So resilience to me is not just being able to bend and flex and respond, but to do it in such a way that you remain healthy and that you're hopefully you might have to make some compromises, but you never sacrifice your values or your convictions.
Wow, brilliantly said. You are definitely a versatile leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, this question really have is around, Colorado's educational landscape has seen significant change, right? And your department sits at the heart of that transformation. Now, from affordability to access to workforce alignment, your
Mm-hmm.
leadership touches countless lives. And we thank you for that. What
Thank you.
is your, yes, what is your overarching vision for higher education in Colorado? And how are you helping reimagine what's possible for students, institutions, and communities?
Yes. So my vision is that Colorado is the best state in the country for post-secondary education. Post-secondary or higher education is everything after high school. And there's many different paths. And it's important to me that each path has the respect that it deserves because it's a choice that individuals make, whether it's for expediency or whether it's to become masterful in those. It's what matters is that the path is available, and then we do look at those things like accessibility, who gets to go, affordability, how do you pay for it, attainment, who actually completes the path. And then now the focus is really on what's the value of the credential that you earn, especially the value in the marketplace. And so right now we have many job openings in Colorado. Many of those job openings are for blue collar workers. So we have an emphasis on making sure that our community colleges, our technical colleges, our other pathways through labor unions and apprenticeships, that all of those are accessible to students who want to pursue that path, maybe work with their hands a little bit more, and that's okay. So for
Mhm.
me, that's my goal, is to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students of Colorado in such a way that they see a line of sight to their highest credential and not just a living wage, but a thriving wage and real fulfillment. It's important to me that people are fulfilled and inspired, not just have a job, because, as you know, we will all work 40 hours a week for 40 or 45 years. So it's important that these young people that we work with and people who are making changes in their careers, that they find something that they're really passionate about and
Yeah.
something that they have the skills for and something that they can do ongoing as a career, not just a job.
Yes, I could not have said it better.
Mm,
Options need to be there, and apprenticeship
hmm.
needs to be presented just as much as college education. And so you
Absolutely.
brilliantly said that. And thank you
Hmm.
for making that an agenda focus of
Hmm.
yours. Now, in times of uncertainty, the best leaders don't just endure, as you know, they adapt and inspire.
Hmm.
Resilience is not simply about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward with renewed clarity. How do you define resilience in your
Hmm.
role as a leader? And what does it mean to you, Dr. Angie, in moments when progress feels slow or resistance feels high? And I would say, like now.
Yes. Well, as you know, in these last few months,
Mm-hmm.
higher education has certainly come under scrutiny, if you will, from the federal administration, and with that has also come significant cuts in funding, and those cuts ultimately it's not cutting the funding to a university in terms of their operational costs. What
Yes.
it's cutting are research dollars, and those research dollars impact students, not just the research that's being done, but also the students who benefit from those research dollars. And so we are experiencing that in Colorado, where we have so much uncertainty, as you mentioned earlier. It's the uncertainty part that really leads to an anxiety, if you will, because you don't know what's coming. You don't know, do I have a scholarship next semester? Not even just next year, but there are some grants across the country that are being cut midstream, which means
Uh,
that those projects have to close down, those laboratories have to close down, and those researchers, whether they're undergraduate, graduate, or professors, they have to stop their work. And so it is real uncertain times in higher education, and and also, we've seen this administration has its own priorities in terms of what they want to advance, and but also what they want to eliminate. And in this case, of course, one of the things that they want to eliminate is what we have begun to call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't understand why, because that's the greatest strength of our country. In fact, that's what makes the United States so unique, is that anyone can come here and be an American. We can't just go to all these other countries and become, I love Japan. I've been there many times, but I can never be Japanese, right? And so same thing with China. I've been there many, many times. I love it. I love Egypt. I've been to many, many countries in my life, but I'm an American, and anyone else can come from their countries and be an American. So diversity is truly a strength of our country, and not just diversity in terms of what you look like or your ethnicity or race, but really diversity in terms of your thinking and your perspectives and what you bring to your life experience. And so right now that's being squelched, and that's especially on college campuses, it's the worst place that you can stop it, because that's what college is for. It's a cauldron of ideas and experiences, and you bring that together, and you iron sharpens iron, and you figure out, why do I think this way, and how, and you get that feedback. And so we're missing what I think is the strength of our higher education system if we don't advance this notion of making sure that everyone has a seat at the table, that people are included, that people are valued. And so that part has been really, really difficult, especially because that's my background. That's what I have advanced for my whole career. So that's been tough.
yes. Again, well said. I 110% agree. It's really all about inclusion, right? From a thought perspective, a skills perspective, diversity of thought
Mm-hmm.
to be a focus in our
Absolutely.
education. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can say that as an immigrant, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely can say that I know that my diversity of thought
Mm-hmm.
does matter and did matter
Mm-hmm.
corporate era, and it should be as such for everyone. So leaders in education often face unseen battles, political pressures, resource constraints, shifting policies. Yet you've led through them with steadiness and optimism. Can you share a challenging moment in your leadership journey when you had to dig deep into your own resilience, and what helped you rise through it stronger?
Mm. Ooh, good. You have these great questions. And so many,
We have
many
good
thoughts.
answers.
Yeah, many thoughts are crossing my mind, from both from when I was a legislator to even the work that I'm doing now and leading the Department of Higher Education, which puts us in a position between, we serve at the pleasure of the governor, but we also have a commission on higher education. We've got legislators that we have to hope that they will sponsor our bills and support our bills that we bring. I will say that, not that this one created too much opposition, but some of the things in terms of policies and how we have to navigate these things, we at the department, it was really important to me that everyone has access to higher education. And we learned that students who had been in the foster care system, only about 3% of them were actually graduating from college. And so, and many of them didn't even go to college. And so we said, let's expand this. Let's bring the people who are on the margins of our society into the middle of our society, and let's provide some opportunities for them. So we created a bill that provides for the entire cost of attendance. That's tuition, fees, room and board, books, maybe even a laptop, to students who had been in the foster care system from 13 years old and up. And so that has been such a highly successful policy. And we split the cost, the state and the institution of higher ed splits the cost for that. And we've seen a great uptick. So providing that kind of opportunity for people who never thought that they could, it was so successful that we've actually expanded it and brought another bill that said we will do the same for students who are in high school now who are experiencing homelessness. And so they too, if they have the academic credentials or even one of our access institutions where you as long as you can continue to keep your grades up, you can enter, also free of charge. And so we have really made opportunities available for people who may not have had them. And so while it wasn't necessarily a fight, I will say that there are times where we have to make the charge. And what I always say is invest in our young people now, or we will pay for them later. If we don't invest in them now and help them to gain employment and to gain the skills and education necessary for a good, fulfilling job, then they may depend on social services and our social safety net later that is on the government's bill, so to speak. And so my feeling is let's invest now so that we don't have to pay later.
That's correct. Well said. Listeners, I really hope that you're listening. Yeah. So this way, the way a leader models perseverance really shapes the collective energy of their organization, which I'm sure you can agree with. What specific practices or principles have you found most effective in cultivating a resilient culture across your teams and institutions you've led?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, there's a couple of things that come to mind. My team knows I live by a credo that I developed when I was a sophomore in high school. And that credo is, I'm as committed to your success as I am to my own. And I operationalize that by my behaviors and by what I do as a leader of the department and also as a friend. My friends know this. I'm as committed to their success as I am to my own. And so if you know that, then you can operate under a culture, if you will, that allows you to be free, that allows you to explore, that allows you to also to respond in ways that sometimes, might not be the best way, but you know that you're safe. And to create that psychological safety within our culture is really important to me. And my team knows that they can be who they really are while they're in the employment of the state of Colorado. And also that I will help them with their next position, because not everybody retires from a state department. And so I want them to build and develop the skills and competencies for their future. And so I think that's a healthy environment in which people can be resilient. Also for me, and I think you may have heard me say this before, maybe last year, that I am committed to activating potential. And if I may, a couple minutes here. So the scientific definition of potential is stored energy, like there is in a battery. The battery can sit on a shelf for years and it still has energy in it. And it only gets, it gets activated when you put it in whatever that battery was made for, whether it's a AA, AAA, a C battery, D battery, 9-volt battery. All the batteries are specific for a particular purpose. And when we put that battery in that machine, if you will, it will power that. It gets activated. The natural state of potential is unactivated. Like I said, it can sit on a shelf for years. And then there is another option, and that is to deactivate the battery. If you blow it up, it will be deactivated. Even though it may never have been activated in the first place, it can be deactivated. Well, that's the scientific definition. But the human definition, or I call it the Paccione definition, because I don't think you'll find it in the dictionary, of potential, is stored greatness. And everyone has it. Everyone has stored greatness, but it's unactivated. The natural state is unactivated. So it's up to us, whether through the policies or conditions or the culture in the environment or through sometimes the power of the spoken word, it's through us to activate that potential. And so that's my passion, is to activate the potential of my employees, if you will, that work for the state, but also for the institutions of higher ed. What are the policies that will help them do better? What are the policies that will bring out the best in people, rather than deactivating potential, which unfortunately sometimes, whether it's funding, whether it's policies, whether it's practices, can actually deactivate. And so my passion is around being an activator of potential wherever I see it.
Wow, that is powerful.
And there's lots of ways. Lots of ways. For instance, Title IX, which was a law that was passed, it was in addition to the Higher Ed Act, the Education Act, which gave women the same opportunities as men in colleges. And so it was enacted in 72, but colleges had to enact it in 78. And in 78 was when they began to give athletic scholarships. So I had a whole lot of potential, but without that athletic scholarship, I never would have been able to go to Stanford University. And so that policy, that law, activated my potential. And so there's lots of ways to do it.
Wow. Wow. I hope everyone is really listening. A lot of wisdom being shared today. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Angie, for being an exceptional executive medication leader. We need more of you for sure.
Thank you.
And so I'm leading with heart and leading with authenticity. That's definitely you. Now, if we can venture into mastering emotional intelligence. Leadership without empathy is direction without connection. I'm sure you can agree with that statement.
Absolutely.
Yes, emotional intelligence really allows us to listen beyond words and lead beyond ego. And so in your experience, how does emotional intelligence shape effective leadership, especially in education, where empathy and equity are deeply intertwined?
Yes, so there's so many factors in emotional intelligence, and one of them is also self-regulation and the ability to regulate yourself, which is really important when you are facing the legislature or facing your governor or facing the commission or facing students. So being able to understand yourself first, and then also being able to understand others, seeking to understand, right, as you listen, rather than seeking to just respond. And so there's so many facets of emotional intelligence that all are in play when we're dealing with legislation, when we're dealing with policy, when we're dealing with creating the boundaries, perhaps, on people's ability to either teach or administer, or what they have to respond to us to, what data they have to give us, and nobody wants to give data, or nobody wants an unfunded mandate. And so when we have all of those things happening, either that we are expressing the need for to others, or others are doing that to us, if you will, as an individual or as a department, we have to be able to regulate our emotional response. And I tell my team, especially my senior team, that I've never used the pressure cooker because I'm afraid of it blowing up. So I've never used the pressure cooker, but I do know that in order to not blow up, you have to release some of the steam. And
Correct.
Some of that is really important for us, that there are times where we may get frustrated, and there are times where we may get, angry at things that are happening, and we have to release that steam. And it's important to me that my team, number one, that they don't do that, they don't hold it in and then do it with their families. I don't want them going home to their families and saying, "Oh, you won't believe what's happening," and blowing off steam on their spouse or their kids or whatever. And I don't want them doing that to their subordinates, if you will, right? Because we also model how we respond to those kinds of things. So that emotional intelligence, to know to whom you can let off steam, which to me is my senior team. We can let off steam to each other, but not down into the organization. And knowing how much and when and for how long, right? So there are times where we have to we have to maybe put some attention to the things that aren't working or the things that we don't like or what problems are out there. But it's a very limited amount of time just to articulate it and then be able to move it forward to, okay, what are some possible solutions and how can we make this work? And what do I like about this? And so it's a matter of where we put our focus. And so emotional intelligence also involves that, is how we manage our energy and how we manage our focus.
Yeah. Well said. Well, you definitely explained how you were able to apply emotional intelligence in navigating, leadership challenges. So thank you so much for that. Even the most aware, I should say, self-aware leaders must keep evolving. And growth in emotional intelligence is a lifelong journey, as you know. Have you intentionally pursued training, mentorship, or reflection practices to enhance your emotional intelligence skill set? And how has that personal growth really influenced your leadership style?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It's important to continue that. We talk about lifelong learning and the books that we're reading, and I'm in the middle of reading a book now called Wiser, and it has to do with the scientific discovery, if you will, and exploration of what wisdom is. And that's really important to me as I continue to lead the department, that I also grow in wisdom over time. And so that's a really important one to me. So reading oftentimes and making sure that you're, for me, I try to read for growth and watch TV for entertainment. so you have to have that balance. But I also have always had a mentor in my life. And so I really value that relationship of somebody who has gone before and somebody who's been down that road and can point out what the exits are or what the potholes are or what you might want to be aware of. And I recently had a mentor / friend who reminded me that I needed to take some time for myself because I don't usually do that. And so I'm going to do that. I think that for about the last 4.5 years, I cared for my mom who had a stroke, and she lives with me, and so she passed 7 months ago. But that was required a lot of my focus and my time and my energy. And so being a full-time employee and being a full-time caretaker, so my mentor friend said, you should probably take a vacation. And so I think that's good. That's wise, because you can't give from an empty cup. And so you have to fill your cup. And I think I might be running on empty. And so it's good to have somebody who loves you, who mentors you, who can see, and then, be responsive. So I think both in terms of our own pursuit of new knowledge, through reading, through webinars, through podcasts, through things like that help us grow, but also always having a mentor in your life. And I remember there was an organization, a nonprofit, and they have a T-shirt that says something to the effect of always be building into someone's life and always have someone building into your life. And I love that T-shirt because that's what it's all about.
Yep. It's a fair exchange. Yes. And it's not all on the receiving end.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You have to give. And I have to say, because I know you personally, just outside of this conversation, you have showed up in excellence as a leader, even while you were going through the most painful moments in terms of losing your mom. I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you.
You're definitely an epitome of grace and leadership.
Thank you.
So we commend you for that. So true leadership is often tested not by easy conversations, but by the hard ones. We're getting into navigating difficult conversations here. Though true leadership are those that challenge perspectives, dismantle biases, or confront deeply held systems. Now, what types of difficult conversations you've had to navigate in your role? And how do you balance candor with compassion in those moments?
Wow. Probably, and it's another great question. In this role, which I've had now for 7 years, it's an appointed position. So the governor appoints his cabinet, And in this role, I'm a cabinet member who leads the Department of Higher Education. So we have lots of departments in state government, and he appoints all of the leaders of those departments. That's the prerogative of the governor. So as an appointed position, I represent the governor in that arena. So, and everybody in that arena knows that I'm a governor's appointee. So leading the department means I try to deliver on the governor's vision for higher education. And it's his vision is first that every high school student leaves high school with a high school diploma and a credential of value. So either an associate's degree or perhaps a career and technical education certificate or something in addition to that high school diploma. So we're trying to make sure that that happens. And then at the higher education, it's really important that individuals are prepared for the workforce. And so we're moving in those directions. And there's not a lot of pushback on that vision. And so there's not a lot of difficult conversations. I think the one that's most difficult is when it comes down to the budget and when it comes down to what will we support. And so there are initiatives that we have that we have to make sure that the legislature, they hold the purse strings, that when the governor supports one of the initiatives, that the legislature also does. And so having those tough conversations with some legislators who might not want to spend money, the state's money, on different educational programs, that those conversations become difficult sometimes. To try to convince, if you will, somebody of the benefits of a program. And we have programs that have tremendous outcomes, really fantastic outcomes. And so you would think that the outcomes themselves would be enough, but it's not always enough.
Yes, absolutely. And even though you said you didn't really have to deal with a lot of difficult conversations, I'm just going to go there for a little bit and just ask, difficult conversations really can be a catalyst for change, and you know that, right? Transforming resistance into understanding, which is key. Now,
yes.
here a time when an uncomfortable dialogue ultimately created a breakthrough or strengthened collaboration in your world.
Wow, it's a good one. I'm such a I'm always trying to find the good in whether it's an initiative or a person or whatever I'm working with. I'm always trying to find. Although there are times when we have to let people go from their position because of performance issues, and those are always the most difficult conversations that we have. And so those are tough. But I think if your focus and if your heart and your intentions are in the right space, then I believe that they can be managed in a way that moves people forward rather than looking backward. And so for me, it's important that we clearly state what's important. We say why it's important, and then we ask the right questions to get at where there might be some opposition or where there might be resistance or what might be able to move somebody forward. So saying what's really important, to whether it's to you or to the governor or to the department, say what's important, say why it's important, and then ask the questions that move people forward. And so that's kind of a strategy that I use, and it seems to work as long as you're very clear about those things.
Yes, yes. Wow. Thank you for that reminder. Clarity is key. And so venturing into empowering, authentic, and inclusive leadership. Now, in a world where leadership is often associated with image and authority, right? Authenticity is a quiet act of courage. It invites trust.
Like that.
And it ignites belonging, which you know very well. What does authentic leadership mean to you personally, Dr.? And how do you stay aligned with your core values when the pressure to conform arises?
Ooh, I like that. Quiet act of courage. Yeah. Most people who know me wouldn't call me quiet. So I'm a high energy person. And I find that energy kind of begets energy. And so so for me, I'm always looking for that energy boost. And so when we think about authenticity, most people know that I am who I am, and I can't help myself. I'm a person who values integrity, and so I'm going to say what I know to be true, and I lean into that. And it's the communication is really critical for me, and so people know that that's what's important. So there are some things that I think I'm known by because I've been around for a while, and so people know that and that I'm going to look for um, a, a way of compromise, perhaps, or a way to get those pieces of legislation across the aisle and across the finish line. And so I think it's important first that you know who you are and you know what your purpose is. I tell students and young people, I always say that if you really want to accomplish your goal, whatever that goal is, or your objective, whether it's a career or a specific outcome, I say that there's four things that have to be aligned. Your passion, and that's the thing that moves you. That's the thing that that you're driven by, if you will. So your passion, your purpose, which sometimes is harder to figure out, and sometimes it takes a little bit of maturity to figure out kind of what am I here for? What is it that I can do that maybe nobody else can do as well as I can do? And it's the thing that moves, me and moves others. And so passion, purpose, values, which sometimes change over time as well, but knowing what you stand for, right? And so you've heard the phrase, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
All for
But
anything.
yes, exactly. But for me, that your values are what you're known for, and what you stand for. And so knowing clearly what your values are. And then the fourth thing are your skills that you either have or skills that you want to develop. So if you have your passion, purpose, values, and skills aligned, then I think you can be your most authentic self. And so without compromising those things, without sacrificing your convictions, it's when you do those things that you really fall into trouble. So as long as you stay focused on those things, I think you can do almost anything.
Wow, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Passion, purpose, value, and skills. That's stuck in
Yes.
my brain now. Alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Your advocacy for equity and belonging shows that leadership isn't about just imitation. It's about inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
You are truly inspiring professional. How do you create environments where your team members, especially women and underrepresented voices, feel empowered to lead authentically and bring their full selves to the table?
Yeah, well, you just said one of my favorite words, inspire. I really love etymology, the study of words. And so when we look at potential, we know what potential, that the scientific definition or the human definition of potential. But inspire is also one of those words that I love because inspire back in the Middle Ages was actually a medical term. And it was a medical term that meant that this person was still alive, that they had a breath in their lungs, that they had air in their lungs, that they were breathing. And it was the opposite of expired. And so a medical doctor would say, this patient has expired and this patient is inspired. It didn't mean that this patient had some bright ideas. It meant that they were still alive. And so to me, as I interpret that, it means that that person brings life to whatever it is that they're doing. They bring energy. There are people who show up at work with no life, with no energy. And those are people who probably don't have those four things aligned and have now, working for 40 years at 40 hours a week doing something that's not inspiring or fulfilling. And that's why it's so important to be inspired. Because when we are inspired, we become inspiring. It's
Mhm.
inspiring to be around somebody who brings life, who brings energy, who knows their purpose and their passion and their values and lives authentically. And so it becomes somewhat contagious. And it becomes a model. There are people who look to that and say, wow, that's how I want to live. I want to live with passion and purpose and
Yes.
uncompromising values and having mastered a skill set. And so we can be models of
Yeah.
that authenticity. But being inspired is number one. And how do we become inspired? Right? What gives us energy? What gives us that breath of life, if you will? And we have to know what that is. And so some people, it means they have to go for a run. Some people have to meditate, do yoga, listen to some music. It depends. Whatever it is that gives you that energy and that life is what you have to do to take care of yourself so that you can be inspired and then inspiring.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Deep. Now,
Yes.
if you can venture into building strategic and personal resilience networks. Now,
Mm-hmm.
behind every impactful leader like yourself
Mm.
stands a web of mentors. And I believe you alluded to having that.
Mm-hmm.
Peers and allies. The invisible architecture of resilience.
Oh, my gosh, you got these phrases. I got to write them down.
I'll
Invisible
have to share them with
architecture.
you later.
I gotta listen to this tape again. Invisible architecture of
Resilience.
what? Oh my
Resilience.
gosh, that was well said. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So who are the,
Mm-hmm.
thank you, who are the people, mentors, or networks that have most profoundly shaped and sustained your leadership journey
Mm-hmm.
over the years?
Yes. Yeah. So thank you. So if anybody looks at my Facebook and sees all my friends, you'll see they're from everywhere around the world, and they're from all different kinds of backgrounds in terms of professions. I have a lot of friends from my sporting days who I continue to gain wisdom from, or I see what they're doing, or we even talk or exchange ideas. And so there's that arena because that's really important. In fact, this weekend I'm going up to a football game, partly because Becky Hammon is going to be there, and Becky Hammon was she was the coach of the WNBA aces that have won 3 out of 4 national championships, and she played at
Wow.
Colorado State University where I was a professor. And so there's wisdom there. How do you do it? How do you continue to, because they didn't start off really well this year, but they ended up winning the national championship. And so it's things like that. So I have that arena. I have the arena of education, both the K-12 education. And so I try to make sure that I'm staying in touch with the people who were mentors up for me back then when I was becoming a high school teacher, and who have become dear friends of mine as well. And then, of course, in the community of corporate training, there's a lot of community members who I see what they're doing, or we get bits of advice from one another. And then once again here, in this case, it's actually even set up for that, in that every state has my equivalent. We're called the State Higher Ed Executive Officer. And
Oh,
so there's
wow.
an organization called the SHIOs, the Higher Ed Executive Officers of all the states. And so we have a network where we communicate with one another, and we'll say, hey, how are you guys doing this? And hey, what are you doing over here? And hey, what's that? So whenever there's new initiatives, we share those with one another. And then we also share, here's what you got to watch out for, or here's where you can really accelerate that. And so having that kind of a network, as you said, that invisible architecture really helps you be resilient, because again, you know what's coming, and you know what to anticipate, and then you also know what to accelerate. And if you can do that, then it makes that way a lot smoother for you. And so whenever I have any, if ever I have a question, I know that there are many, many people that I can reach out to and say, what do you think about this? But I also know that there are those, as I said earlier, who will tell me if I don't see something, they will tell me, hey, have you thought of this? Or why don't you try this? And I love that. I love that because I embrace it. And I embrace both the responsibility that I have to others, but also I embrace the receptance of what they have for me. So it's that notion that I want to bring my best to everything I do, but I also want to bring out the best in others, in everything that they do and that we do together. So that's my strategy.
Thank you so much. We value professionals who not only receive but share knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
generously sharing their knowledge. That is absolutely key
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how you are remembered.
Yeah, and if I may, so for I'll give you for instance, and so I have a great relationship with the woman who leads one of our campuses. We have 3 institutions on one campus. I think we're the only state that has that. And so 3 separate institutions, a community college, a 4-year college that has graduate programs, and then more of a graduate school that also has some undergraduate. But anyway, they share a space, they share a campus. And then there's an executive who leads that campus. And so last spring, 2 springs ago, when we had the encampments and the protests, I was on that campus a lot to help, just kind of be another set of eyes, and if there's wisdom to maybe share some of that. And then one of our other campuses at one of our private institutions, they were experiencing some encampments and stuff like that. So I asked this CEO, hey, would you be willing to go to that campus and share what you've learned from leading the campus through this experience? And I love that. And so we did. We went over and shared at that campus. I love that, of taking expertise and bringing it to another place where it might be in need, and being able to make those connections. Like you said, that invisible architecture.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And I know that you mentioned, I'm just so grateful that you do have that support ecosystem. And you do have the organizations like the Shield. That was definitely a learning for me today. I didn't know
the great
that.
organization. Yes, the great organization. Yeah.
Yes, and I know that networks extend across boundaries, right? From state boards to global collaborations. I place a lot of emphasis on networking, and because of that, we have gotten excellent opportunities to lead globally.
Nice.
Because of that. Now, are there any particular communities, organizations, or partnerships outside of the Shield that have been instrumental in advancing your mission in higher education?
Yeah, without a doubt. And so, part of our mission, of course, is to have those industry partnerships. When I first started, when the governor first appointed me to this position, there were 2 positions that were not in the department that I knew I needed to have. And one of those was a director of industry partnerships, because I had just come from 12 years of working with industry, doing corporate training literally around the globe. And I heard from so many of those senior leaders that they didn't feel like the college graduates, those new hires, were prepared for the workplace. So it was really important to me to bring that focus to the Department of Higher Education. And so we were able to make those connections between industry partners. And I was able to say, hey, there were a couple of places where I worked through my past job that were doing it really well. And so, for instance, Ohio State University has some great industry partnerships. Michigan has some great industry partnerships. And so I sought information and wisdom from how they were doing it so that we could bring it to the state level and see if we could replicate that. And so now we have a designation that the department gives to what we call career connected campuses. So campuses where they truly are focused on making those connections from the academics to the careers. And so it's nice to be able to have people that you can call on. So from all of that work that I did, 12 years of work with corporate, training big companies like a Procter and Gamble or Lockheed Martin, or all big companies, I can text them some trusted advisors that I was a trusted advisor to them, and now they have been a trusted advisor to me around this new thing that I'm doing with higher education. So it's really critical that you, of course, never burn bridges, but that you build relationships that are really strength-based relationships that you can count on for life. When I say I'm as committed to your success as I am to my own, there's no time bound on that. That is for life. And my friends know that, and that's how I like to live my life.
Wow, beautiful. And you have really had an outstanding career, corporate touch points, state board, you're exceptional.
Oh, well, I really tried to move in the direction of those 4 things. I've really tried to make decisions that move me in the direction of my passion, my purpose, my values, and my skills. And it may be circuitous, but it is always fulfilling and always inspiring. And I always feel like I can contribute. And if I can't make a contribution, then I pursue the next thing.
That's correct. You know when to step aside.
Yes.
Wonderful. And now, as we wrap up here, and this has been such a beautiful conversation, and exchange, Dr. Angie. Thank you so much for your time and your just stellar leadership all around.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So while we've made progress, as we wrap up here, while we've made progress in representation, the climb for women in executive leadership, particularly in education and public service, remains steep. What do you see as the most significant barriers still facing women and underrepresented leaders in higher education, and how can institutions meaningfully address them?
Mm-hmm. Boy, it's another great question. And you know, when we look at this election that we just had a couple of days ago, I believe there are 14 women who were elected as governors, the most ever. And so when we see that, that means that we are making some making some advances. Colorado still has not had a female governor, and I don't know what it's going to look like in 2026, but so there are advances that are being made. There's a great, I don't know if she's still doing this work, but one of, not a mentor of mine, but certainly somebody that I looked to for the training that she was doing. Her name was Dr. Pat Heim, Heim. I don't know if she's still doing work. She may have retired, but she did a lot of work on women in leadership roles and how we get there, and knowing the language of leadership as it was in the 90s, if you will, and it still is a little bit. There's a real there's an athletic overtone to a lot of the leaders' language, you know, hitting a home run, or man, we scored a touchdown, or we really, you know, knocked them out. You know, there's a lot of like athletic lingo that's involved in that. And also women, when we're, you know, like applying for a job or seeking to advance, you know, we're not the best at I would say bragging on ourselves, right? Men are better at doing that. And if you look at even at the games that we typically have played, again, I'm 65, so I'm, you know, going back a few years, but when we raise our kids, we used to raise girls to talk a lot, playing, you know, games that required a lot of language, but boys were playing a lot of sports, which required three-word adjectives. Pick them up. Who's got them? You know, it's like only 3 words. That's all they said, and it was all about the action. And so now we've seen the blending of that. We've seen, we don't say now, oh, she plays like a guy. No, because she plays like a woman who plays really well. So we don't even use that language anymore, which is good, because that's going to help us to advance. And, you know, it used to be that if women didn't feel like they knew everything about that job, they would say so. Well, you know, I haven't had a lot of experience in X, Y, and Z, where guys would say, oh, yeah, I can do that job, knowing that they don't have the experience. They would. So anyway, so there's still some places where we can maybe be more assertive, and I hope I'm not, you know, stepping on toes or anything, but there are still ways that women have to show up even stronger, so that we really do get the positions that we are qualified for. And so there's still room for improvement, of course, but we have made great gains. And that's just, for me, I want to make sure that we continue to activate that potential, to make sure we bring out the best in people, and that we make sure that everyone has access to the things that they're really good at. And so that's up to us to bring people, what does it say, lift as we rise. And so let's make sure that we leaders, women leaders who have gotten to these positions, that we lift as we rise.
Yes, and I have to say this, we all have a grand opportunity as women leaders before us. Just be encouraged.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that. And as we close, what final message would you like to leave with us? This has been exceptional. But what final message would you like to leave with our global audience about breaking barriers with resilience, purpose, and authenticity?
Wow. Yeah. You know, I think the message is that barriers, and I think you said this earlier, we have to see barriers differently, because, you know, there's always an opportunity to break through a barrier. And we do that by really focusing on the one thing that we can always control, and that's our response to what happens around us. That's the one thing that we can always control, how we respond to what happens around us. Does it break us down? Does it disappoint us? Does it make us, throw in the towel? Again, a sports analogy, but how do we respond? And that's what we can control. So when we're focused on the outcomes that we want, when we have the skills necessary and the values necessary, and it's something we're really passionate about, and it fills in with our purpose, if those things are aligned, then we just have to continue to push forward. And then we will find ourselves right where we're supposed to be. And so I would even eliminate the idea of barriers. We either break through them or we go around them, we go over them, we go under them. We find a way. We find a way to do the thing that we feel called to do, that is part of our purpose, and that will bring us the fulfillment that we want so that we can be inspired and be inspiring. So I think if we wrap all of those things together, we will find a way or make a way.
Wow. Very thought-provoking final
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. Thank you so much, Dr. Angie.
Mm-hmm.
Your journey really reminds us that leadership is not a position.
That's right.
It's a posture. It's how we show up when things are uncertain, how we lift others, like you said, as we climb,
Mm-hmm.
and how we turn systems of education into movements of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Your story calls us to lead from the heart, to act with courage, and to keep faith in what education can make possible for every person it touches. Now, on behalf of the Breaking Barriers community and our viewers worldwide, thank you. Profound gratitude for sharing your light, your leadership, and your unwavering belief in human potential. I should add, of greatness.
That's right.
Everyone watching, may Dr. Angie's story remind you that barriers are not walls, they are invitations. And when purpose meets perseverance, anything is possible. Dr. Angie, thank you so much for being a guest today, brilliant guest on the Breaking Barriers interview series. Best wishes for mighty success.
And
you had an amazing career. And we thank you for all that you do. Very well done.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Of course.